You are listening to The Soul's Quiet Call, written by Akumah and voiceover by Sara.
Akumah Audiobooks.
Chapter 34, A New Beginning. The days had stretched into weeks, and the weeks had turned into months. The whirlwind of emotions, the chaos of their pasts, and the overwhelming weight of their individual struggles were now behind them, like a storm that had finally passed. Meera and Aarav stood on the other side, hand in hand, no longer just survivors of their own fears but partners, deeply attuned to one another, understanding each other in ways they had never thought possible. The apartment they now shared, once a symbol of uncertainty, had become their sanctuary. The walls that had once echoed with the quiet tension of unresolved emotions were now filled with laughter, soft conversations, and a peaceful sense of belonging. The intensity of their early days together, marked by constant emotional turmoil, had settled into a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was theirs. One quiet Saturday afternoon, Meera sat by the window, a cup of tea in her hands, staring out at the busy street below. The city was alive, full of movement, but there was a calmness in her that mirrored the stillness of the world outside. The frantic energy that had once dominated her life had softened, and now, for the first time, she felt like she could breathe freely without the weight of her gift hanging over her. Aarav entered the room, his footsteps light but purposeful, carrying with him the easy confidence that had become part of him over time. He stood for a moment, watching her, his eyes softening as he took in the sight of her, so much more at peace than the woman he had first met. "Thought I'd find you here," he said with a warm smile, his voice low but filled with affection. Meera glanced up at him, her face breaking into a smile. "I'm not hiding, I promise," she teased, but her voice carried the warmth of contentment, the kind of contentment that could only come from being truly at peace with oneself and the world around her. He walked over to her, his presence steady and grounding. Without a word, he sat down beside her, reaching for the cup she had set down on the table. "It's a beautiful day," he said, his tone soft, as if savoring the quiet of the moment. "But I think it's even more beautiful with you by my side." Meera smiled, her eyes finding him. "I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice quiet but full of certainty. "For the first time in a long while, I feel like I can just be. Not because of what I can see or what I have to know, but because of us." Aarav's hand found hers, their fingers naturally interlocking as they had so many times before. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. A silent promise, a reassurance that they were in this together, no matter what. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Aarav said, his voice soft. "How far we've come. How much we've both changed." Meera nodded, her gaze drifting back to the window. The world outside was still, but she could see the subtle changes, the leaves on the trees swaying gently in the breeze, the slow movement of cars on the streets, the way the sunlight bathed everything in a warm glow. It felt like the whole world was breathing with her. "It doesn't feel like the same world we used to know," she said. "It feels lighter. Clearer." Aarav squeezed her hand, his thumb running over her knuckles in a rhythmic pattern. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. "But I think the best part is that we're just starting." The words hung between them, a promise for the future, a future they were both ready to face together. Meera took a deep breath, looking at Aarav as if she were seeing him for the first time all over again, only this time, there was no hesitation, no fear. Just love. "I know I've said this before," she began, her voice steady, "but I think I've finally come to understand it. My gift, it was never meant to be a burden. It was just a part of me. And now, I don't need to hide behind it. I can live for me, not for what I see in others." Aarav's gaze softened, and he leaned closer to her. "You've always been enough, Meera. Just as you are. And now that you've found peace with yourself, it's like everything else has fallen into place." She smiled at him, the warmth of his words settling deep within her. "I've learned to stop running from what I was afraid of," she said softly. "And now I'm ready to chase the things I want. For me." Aarav nodded, his expression serious but filled with hope. "And I'm ready to support you, every step of the way," he promised, his voice filled with the quiet strength he had found in their time together. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their shared journey sitting between them but no longer pulling them down. The challenges they had faced, separately and together, had shaped them, but they no longer defined them. The emotional scars had healed, and the love that had grown in its place was stronger than either of them could have imagined. Aarav broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about the future lately," he said, his gaze shifting to the window. "About what we want. What we could build." Meera turned to him, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Aarav smiled, a soft, knowing smile that carried with it a mix of excitement and peace. "I think it's time for us to stop looking back at what we've lost or been through. It's time to look forward. To make new memories. Build a life, our life. One that's ours." Meera's heart skipped a beat as she realized what he was saying. It wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about creating something new, a future that was not defined by their past, but by the love and trust they had built together. "I agree," she said, her voice filled with quiet excitement. "I want that. I want to build a life with you, Aarav. A life where we can both grow and support each other, without any of the old fears holding us back." Aarav leaned in, his forehead resting gently against hers. "We're already building it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll keep building it with you, every day, for the rest of our lives." Meera closed her eyes, allowing herself to bask in the warmth of his words, in the promise they held. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself staring at a future she had once thought impossible, a future she now knew they could create together. "Together," she whispered, the word carrying all the weight of everything they had overcome and everything they had yet to face. As they sat there, in the quiet comfort of each other's presence, they realized that the greatest gift they had given one another wasn't just love, it was the chance to build something new. Something stronger, more real, and more beautiful than either of them had ever imagined. And with that, Meera and Aarav knew that their new beginning had already started. The road ahead was still unknown, but it didn't matter. As long as they faced it together, with open hearts and hands clasped tightly, they could overcome anything. The past was behind them. The future was wide open. And their love, grown, tested, and true, was the foundation upon which they would build the rest of their lives. A new beginning.
Akumah Audiobooks.
Refer to the channel playlist for a better experience and close your eyes to let your imagination run wild. Subscribe.